Shall we start? Okay. NCLT and NCLAT. Before we start, let us just understand the journey from Company Law Board, High Court to tribunals. So RRD committee was the one who first proposed that there are too many authorities in the Companies Act, and that is the result why there is so much of delay, especially in winding up. So they proposed that all the tribunal, all the authorities and all the power which is there with respect to several functions should come together. And that was when they considered the idea of a tribunal. So it was in 2002 that the Companies Amendment Act of 2002 amended the Companies Act 1956, and the concept of tribunal was instituted. But thereafter, it was a long and arduous journey, and the journey is still continuing before the tribunal gets constituted. So in 2002, the constitution of this committee was challenged. It was challenged by the Madras Bar Association, where they said that this tribunal is not constitutional. So that is where the struggle started as to whether a tribunal should be constituted, what is the future. And in 2002, when the case was filed, finally in 2010, the Supreme Court said that yes, constitution of tribunal is fine, but the constitution, there are certain unconstitutional provisions that are there. So just to give you a brief update as to what happened. 2002, after the case was filed, in 2010, the Supreme Court in its judgment in 2010 said that look, the concept is okay, but when it comes to a quasi-judicial authority, the person who is heading it should be a person of a judicial nature. So a judicial person should be there on board. Selection committee. If administrative people and government officials are going to choose a judicial member, then the essence of a quasi-judicial authority is lost. So a selection committee who selects the tribunal member has to be somebody who is qualified as a judicial member, and in his judicial capacity he selects a judicial member. So there should be a constitution of a committee where the casting vote or a veto right in terms of selection of a member of the tribunal should be only in the hands of a judicial person. And that is what was the dispute in 2010. So thereafter, once in 2010, the provisions, some of them were held unconstitutional, they did not consider it fit to incorporate those changes in the 1956 Act, because at that time already it was in process to enact the new act, that is the Companies Act 2013 in its new form. So that's why at that time nothing happened. In 2013, when the act was enacted, again all these provisions of tribunal were taken into consideration. Then many of the changes which were suggested by the Apex Court were incorporated. However, again they found that 2 or 3 suggestions, or rather directions of the Supreme Court were not followed. And that's why the Madras Bar Association went before the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said yes, that selection committee, again there is a problem with respect to the selection process. The veto right does not lie with a person, but rest all other provisions, except one more provision with respect to technical member, that a cost accountant and a person in the administrative capacity cannot be even a technical member. So few such errors and issues were found, and rest within 2 years, that is in 2013 the case was filed, in 2015 the case was decided. And they have said that only these 2-3 things are an issue, otherwise you can go ahead with the tribunal, you can constitute it. So if you see the time limit that it took for this time around for the Supreme Court to take a decision, it was very quick. And that shows that the government is keen to incorporate it. The government is keen to constitute an NCLT, and we have been seeing that they are looking for places, they are putting forth a process. So we see now that tribunal can become a reality very soon. If not this year, probably next year. But the wait of say 15 years around is likely to be over very soon, and the tribunal can become a reality very, very soon. So this is about the first question that inevitably a person asks, that why hear about NCLT? We have been hearing about it for last so many years. What changes today? So the change is that today there is keenness on the part of the government to incorporate it, institute it, and it is possible that it can become a reality very soon, and we as company secretaries should gear up to this new forum, because it includes a great set of opportunities for all professionals, young as well as the old members. So just to give you a brief update regarding what opportunities lie, is it just that a company secretary with 15 years of practice can become a technical member, or just that we can represent before the company law board, or represent before the National Company Law Tribunal just the way we represent before the company law board? No, it is not that. The thing is, in the new act, not just as a member or not just as a representative, but there are several capacities in which you can be associated with the process. You can be a company liquidator in a voluntary winding up. You can be a company liquidator even in an involuntary winding up, because many of the powers which were erstwhile enjoyed by the official liquidator are now given and vested in a company liquidator who will be appointed, which can be a company secretary. Even in the SIC companies process, earlier when BIFR used to select scheme and appoint an operating agency, it was generally a bank or a financial institution. But today, a company administrator or an interim administrator who is appointed to devise a scheme, or who is appointed to do several things when a SIC company scheme is being implemented for its revival and rehabilitation, many of those functions are going to be played by the company secretary, because he can be selected as an interim administrator or as a company administrator. Registered valuer, a field which was erstwhile only a domain of the chartered accountants. Today, in a merger process, not only can you represent and completely deal with the entire merger process, wherein many a times you had to give it to us as advocates. The scheme, after completing the scheme and drafting the scheme, the entire work used to go to an advocate. So now a company secretary can deal with the entire spectrum of a merger. And along with that, he can also be a valuer, because registered valuer is a new concept. Valuation by way of a registered valuer is a new concept, and that registered valuer can even be a company secretary. So these are some of the many fields that are going to open up to the company secretaries, and that is why we need to understand the nitty-gritties of NCLT. What is it? When will it be incorporated? Where will it be? What kind of powers are enjoyed with it? Whether it is just a change in nomenclature where CLB is just renamed as NCLT, or is it an entire change in the way things function, or it is a sea change in the way things will go on henceforth? So that is what we need to see, and that is what I'll try to address in today's forum. Let me give you a brief perspective of what the Companies Act does. What does the Companies Act do? What has it done? Is it just, some changes, some tweaking of the provision, or is it something much different? What I feel what the Companies Act has done is, it, in terms of enforcement, it saw that the enforcement of Companies Act got delayed. Many a times the purpose of incorporating certain sections, especially deterrent section, got diffused. Why? Because the enforcement mechanism was not able to handle the avalanche of cases and the complexity of cases which are there in the Companies Act. So what did they do? They said, let us create an entirely different forum. What should we do? We'll create an entire different enforcement mechanism. If there are civil matters, let us have a competent authority who specializes in company law matters. So let us have NCLT. They again found that yes, in enforcement, when we go to the police, they are not able to understand the nature of corporate frauds. If we tell them that, look, he has made a misstatement in prospectus, he will say, so what? It's just a statement. This person has murdered somebody. Should I look at that, or should I look at a misstatement? but in fact that person who has murdered somebody has done a very small crime compared to a misstatement in prospectus which defeats the purpose and which has hurt the entire financial system. So they were not able to grasp the importance of these concepts and the need to enforce company law provisions. So therefore, a new setup SFIO has been given recognition wherein they can investigate serious frauds in the Companies Act. Then a separate special court for every matter with respect to criminal liabilities in the Companies Act. So this is the enforcement mechanism that they have devised. Now NCLT, as we saw, is a small component in this enforcement mechanism, wherein all the civil matters will go. All civil matters in the Companies Act, most of them are going to go to NCLT. This NCLT, the constitution of this NCLT will comprise of a president and technical members and judicial members. Now with respect to technical members, there are certain constitutional issues which will be sorted very soon. Amendments are proposed, so those amendments will take place very soon, and this is what will happen. How many NCLTs will be there, again, is a question. In the Supreme Court, the affidavit which has been filed, they say there will be 16 NCLTs. So it is possible that not just in Bombay but even in Chhattisgarh there can be an NCLT, but probably initially they will start with 4 NCLTs and 1 NCLAT in Delhi, and wherever there are CLBs that will be replaced and there will be NCLTs. But later on it is possible that they may have an NCLT for every state, and that is what was the intent of the government, which was shown in the affidavit that they have filed in the Supreme Court. Now let us see what are the powers of NCLT. Is it just people powers which were used by various people? Those powers are just combined and put in NCLT, or is it much more? So yes, to certain extent, certain powers which were enjoyed by different authorities, say the central government, certain investigation related powers of central government, certain powers with respect to revival of sick companies which power was enjoyed by BIFR will now be with NCLT. High Court's power to merge, to reduce capital, to wind up companies, that power has gone to the NCLT. So these are the powers from the High Court, they have gone to NCLT. Main is winding up, mergers, reduction, revival of defunct companies, and variation of rights. With respect to CLB also, most of CLB's powers are now vested with the tribunal. Certain small powers like change in registered office and all are not with the tribunal, but will be by the enjoyed by the central government officials. And in BIFR will completely be closed. That forum will no longer be there when NCLT is incorporated, and all its powers will be enjoyed by tribunal. So revival of any company will now be a subject matter of the NCLT. And these are the new powers. Class action, I have delivered several lectures in which I have tried to analyze what kind of a power is this power of class action. It's a huge power. I have put forth a little some slides with respect to class action, but probably some other time I will try to explain class action. That is a very big remedy which is being given under the new act. That remedy can change the way corporates function, and it can be used, it can also be misused. So probably over time tribunals will try to devise tests to stop this power from being misused. But otherwise it's a huge power which is there in the hands of the tribunal to prevent any company from doing any wrong. Then the second power is power to deregister. This is not the power with respect to defunct company, trying to close down company just under the regular process. If a company is incorporated with a fraudulent motive, or they find that there are some misstatements which is made, the tribunal can suo moto or on application of any person. Mind it, any person, they can wind up deregister a company. This is very different from striking off a company or removing it. You can apply by saying that this company was incorporated with a fraudulent motive, and you can block the company and stop it from functioning that day by applying to the tribunal if the tribunal feels that there is substance in what you are saying. Then removal of an auditor. Again, these provisions with respect to auditors, there have been too many harsh provisions with respect to auditors, and tribunal is the one who has been given these powers to deal with it, whether it is reopening, revising of accounts, and it is the tribunal who will have to over time find a balance wherein the auditors also are protected as well as the interest of the larger public is also protected. So this is also a large power which can be used by companies, especially by shareholders who are disgruntled by the companies. These are the powers that they can use, and these are the powers that one need to be well aware of. It's huge powers. On face of it, there are just 5 or 6 additional powers, but the kind of impact they can have in the corporate segment is huge. Let us again go back to what will happen, because more than new matters, people are concerned with what will happen. If I have a merger today, what will happen to my merger? If there is a company winding up, what will happen to it? So let us just try to understand that fine, after NCLT comes up, what will be the immediate scenario? What will happen to my old matters? How do I, what should I do once the tribunal is incorporated or constituted? So the most important thing is there is a section in the Companies Act wherein they have mentioned what will happen to various matters. So with respect to High Court, they have said that the matter should continue from the stage where you left it. So in a merger, if you have sought dispensation of meetings, you will have to start from that stage. So the dispensation, after your meetings are dispensed with, you are just going for sanctioning of the scheme. You have to go only for sanctioning of the scheme to the tribunal. You don't have to redo the process. That is what has been mentioned with respect to High Court matters. If it's a winding up, if the High Court has already held that the company is unable to pay its debt and wind up the company, then in that event, from that stage onwards, what is to be done thereafter will be the prerogative of tribunal, but it will not redo what has been done by the High Court. And that is what is the mandate with respect to High Court matters for the tribunal. What about Company Law Board? With respect to Company Law Board, they have been given a free hand. They have said that these matters which are pending in the Company Law Board will get transferred to the NCLT. And after they get transferred, the tribunal will have a discretion whether and at which stage to start them. So if for instance you have certain matters, say compounding matters, what is to be done if already a hearing has been held in Company Law Board? What will happen to the matter in the tribunal? The tribunal can take a call. They can say that no, I haven't heard it, please just mention the details and mention the facts again. If it's an operation mismanagement matter, if there is a interim order which has been given in Company Law Board, the tribunal will rethink whether they want to go ahead and retain that interim order which is given, or they want to rehear the application for the stay and the interim orders. So with respect to these matters, the tribunal will have a discretion, and you will have to put forth why these orders which have been already passed should be taken into consideration and why the matter should be taken from there forth. So that is something that the company secretaries will have to do once the tribunal is constituted. What about BIFR? SIG companies are facing a major issue, and they are still thinking what are the strategies to safeguard themselves. Because BIFR has been with respect to NCLT, once NCLT gets constituted and once these provisions get notified, BIFR all proceedings will abate. That is what the Act says. That means that if there is a pending proceeding, that proceeding will stop. What happens in BIFR? If you go to BIFR and if a BIFR decides that you are a SIG company, you get numerous benefits. Numerous in the sense, nobody can file a case against you. They have to take BIFR's permission to file a case against you. So you are protected in every sense. Your unsecured creditors cannot take action against you. But if suddenly tomorrow the Act is going to get notified, all the companies who are enjoying a status of a safeguarded company, of a SIG company under BIFR, all those companies are going to lose protection, because those proceedings are not going to get transferred to tribunal. They are going to abate, because the provisions of SIC companies under the new act have been rehauled. So many of these companies have to prove that they do have a SIC company status under the new act, and until that is done, how they are going to get protected is not very clear, and there will be problems in safeguarding their interest in the meantime. So that is again going to be one area many companies will approach you, ask you what is to be done. So this is what will happen to the old proceedings. Now let's deal with another important question, which is it a mere transfer of power? Is NCLT just going to take up the powers, like you were doing mergers under the old act, you will do mergers under the new act. You were doing SIC company related proceeding under the BIFR proceeding, the same type of proceeding will take place in NCLT. You were doing, say, operation mismanagement cases in company law board, same matters will go here. Whereas the provisions on face of it don't look very different. There was merger under old act, there is merger under new act. There was winding up under old act, there is winding up under new act. So what changes? That's a very important question that you need to ask. But let me tell you, the entire law as such, even on face of it, has not changed. Because of the constitution of tribunal and because of certain new provision, the impact of those powers has changed. The manner in which those powers will be used has changed. So there are certain small changes in the merger related procedure, in the procedure with respect to winding up, which is going to change the way things take place under the new act. So even if the law has undergone a little change, the impact is going to be significant. I will deal with some of these important areas like merger and SIC companies and all a little later, but this is just a brief overview. Then second question, what are the powers of NCLT? So NCLT as such, as I said, it is going to safeguard all the civil rights of many of the stakeholders, rather all the stakeholders under the Companies Act. So it is not just what powers were enjoyed by CLB, it is an authority with far more powers. You can just find one word in the Companies Act which will give you just an understanding of what will happen. Just check the word compensation. The word compensation under the new act is there several times, more than the times that it is there under the old act. And if you see about the liabilities of officers, directors and other people who hold an authority in the company, even auditors, the word compensation, there is no upper limit to that. They said that, look, in the Companies Act, if we put a upper limit to the penalties, it is creating a problem. Because they say, okay, how much is the penalty? 1 lakh, fine, I am okay with that, I will pay 1 lakh penalty. Because in NSCL fraud, I am earning 25,000 crores. So the fraud is of 25,000 crores, so what is 1 lakh? So that ad valorem penalties have been added, and along with that, they have used the word compensation at several places. And this compensation word, mind it, is a very interesting word. As lawyers, we love the word compensation because there is no upper limit to the word compensation. So compensation, you say in Satyam scam, what is the compensation? A person, an investor, an aggrieved investor could say whatever is the difference between the price that was there at the time when the fraud came to the notice and the current rate will be my damages. So from 800 to 8, if my price goes so down, it is only on account of the fraudulent practices of the management. So kindly ask the entire management, the company, all the people concerned, all the financial advisors, ask everybody to pay me compensation. And tribunal can do that. Tribunal can not only is empowered to give this kind of damages, they are also empowered to investigate. And they are open powers. They have said that you can investigate. Manner in which you will inquire into the proceeding which is before you, you can decide. So based on that power to inquire, they can appoint forensic auditors. That is an opportunity for chartered accountants. They can appoint a person to investigate and inquire into the accounts and the minutes book. That is again an opportunity for company secretaries. They can look into that. That is also a threat to the company secretaries and the chartered accountants, because this proceeding can have an impact and they can also be at the receiving end. So they have to safeguard themselves on one end, and that opportunity also exists at the other end, either to safeguard your company by appearing in NCLT, or to safeguard them by trying to devise processes in which such kind of penalties and such kind of cases can be stalled. And how do you ensure that your company identifies any problematic shareholder and tries to resolve issues at a lower end so that things don't get escalated. So as company secretaries, in practice, in employment, all, this is an area which has potential. And this is the area which you can explore. As we say that as company secretaries, it is not just about preparing minutes. It is not just about doing the regular filing exercise. A company secretary adds value to the organization, and this is the way you can add value to your organization, by safeguarding your corporation in a way that ensures that this new Companies Act and the deterrent provisions that are there, you safeguard the company from the impact of this. Even if your organization is a creditor to certain companies, even then you're going to safeguard it, because you know how to use the Companies Act to ensure that the company doesn't fool you. So that way, in different capacities, whether inside a company or outside a company, as an advisor to the company, you're going to assist the company, and that is the reason why you should know this. So let me just start with the powers of NCLT. So these are the general powers. Under the new Act, the tribunal has a power to pass orders. They were there even under the old Act. But those orders can be enforced by the tribunal. So those powers, if you do not obey them, that used to take place sometimes. CLB proceeding, people used to say, it's a CLB, I will see. When it goes to the High Court, they file contempt proceeding, that time I will think about it, whether I want to follow this order or not. But NCLT can, if you don't follow NCLT's order, can pass stricture against the person. So the sanctity of an order of a NCLT is much higher than the sanctity of an order of a CLB. Then thereafter, they can inquire into any proceeding. As I mentioned, they have powers of a civil court. Whatever orders have been passed by them, final orders, can be executed by them. So even execution, the delay that took place in the lower courts with respect to execution of the orders, to actually realize, say, you are to be paid. They say, okay, fine, you are entitled to a compensation. But companies may not pay. They will say, okay, fine, there is a compensation, file execution proceeding. That may take several years. So they have a power even with respect to execution of the orders. Then in every case, say operation mismanagement, winding up, the sick company proceeding, they have different powers with respect to each of these fields. So let us start with what are the powers under different proceeding. Let us start with merger. Before we start with the details of the powers that are there with NCLT, let's understand what has changed in the merger field. So under the new Act, what has happened, merger, which is a power given to NCLT, is far different from the merger that took place under the old Act. Under the old Act, they found that there were several defects in the manner in which mergers took place. For instance, the valuation report was never open to the public, to the shareholders. So many people used to say this is the valuation and this is the correct valuation. So such issues were noticed in the past. And what the new Act has done is, they are saying that in the process of a merger, all stakeholders, whether it's a creditor, whether it is a member, whether it is a shareholder, whether it is the government, whether it is other statutory authorities, everybody should be protected. So as we see, many of the provisions which are already notified in the Companies Act, everything has a history, or rather, as certain people tell it, there is a fraud behind every section. So every section has been incorporated because there was some history and some problems which were noticed in the past. So even these changes in the merger related provisions are because of certain problems that were found in the past. What happened in Sandvik Asia's case? Entire minority shareholding were purchased. Then they tried to do a buyback through a merger. SEBI wanted to appeal against this scheme and say that this scheme is fraudulent. They were not able to do that. Buyback under this scheme, they said you cannot do a buyback under this scheme. SEBI objected, central government objected. They said no, it's possible. In other cases, what was happening is people used to say that look, we will send notice to every creditor, so don't ask us to hold a creditors meeting. So let us not hold a creditors meeting. We will just simply give a notice that there is a merger taking place. In other cases, what was happening is schemes were devised in a way that certain income tax provisions, it was just a way to contravene certain income tax provision, or it was in a manner that certain authorities, say for instance SEZ, if a SEZ unit cannot be sold, they were merging the unit. So that way certain issues were found. So what the new law says, let me protect interest of every shareholder and even the interest of the company. What is the problem that the company faces? The company faces a problem that merger proceedings get delayed. So firstly, they have given it to National Company Law Tribunal that reduces delays to a certain extent. Thereafter, what are the problems that company faces? Some shareholder holding 1% shares tries to block the proceedings because they want something in addition to what others are getting. So it was seen that shareholders and creditors simply object to the scheme just for the sake of it, so that if tomorrow the company is in a hurry, they will pay something extra. And this practice was deprecated in the past. The courts did not allow it, but it used to result in wastage of time. So now they say the shareholder and the creditor, one having 5% or 10%, unless that percentage is there, you cannot object. So shareholders 5%, creditors 10%. That way, only if you fulfill that criteria, only then you can object. Otherwise, you are not entitled to object to the scheme. Another problem which company faced was that people. What used to happen was the statutory authorities used to take an enormous amount of time in giving their reports. And they saw that under the new act, you need to consult not just the registrar of companies, the regional director and the official liquidator, but you will have to consult far more number of authorities. So if that happens, the company will be at loss, because there is certain timelines that are there in which if the merger takes place, it is beneficial to the company. And there are certain schemes where for income tax reason the schemes have to be completed within the time. So they said, let us protect the interest of the company. Fine, you have to give notice to several people, but they have to, if they have an objection, they have to make an objection within 30 days. If they don't do that objection, if they don't make that objection, they are not entitled to raise any problems henceforth. They are not entitled to object to the scheme or to find any flaws in the scheme. They have deemed to have approved the scheme. In Sandvik Asia's case, what happened was that SEBI wanted to appeal against the scheme and say that this scheme is not favorable. They were not allowed to object to the scheme because they said under the Companies Act, you are not allowed, you don't need to give notice to SEBI, so SEBI does not play a role. It doesn't matter. Even if they safeguard shareholders' interest, they should have objected before. They cannot object now. So under the new act, it is specifically mentioned that you will have to give a copy of the scheme to SEBI and you will wait for 30 days before they raise objection to the scheme. Then certain schemes, they do the valuation in such a interesting manner that shareholder, or rather the minority shareholders, are at loss, and that valuation is never brought forth, so they are not able to understand why the valuation was found and how to object to it. And that used to be the problem in Bombay High Court, wherein when shareholders used to come to object, they used to say, at least give me a copy of the valuation report so that I can object to the scheme. So what the new act does, they are protecting the shareholders' interest. In which manner? They are saying do two things. Increase the number of disclosures that you give. If there is a scheme, please give the valuation report to the shareholder. If you are doing a compromise, CDR scheme, corporate debt restructuring scheme, as by way of a scheme of compromise and arrangement, please inform your shareholder, give the details to your shareholder as well as the creditors. So they said disclosure, increase disclosure to everybody concerned, and that is how that they felt that the shareholders' interest is protected. Then creditors' interest also they tried to protect by saying that creditors' meetings should be held. So if all the creditors come together, they will be able to decide what what is the scheme, and if one creditor is objecting, why is he objecting, and put some thought to it. So therefore, a creditors meeting is made mandatory unless 90% of the creditors in value allow the scheme. So such changes have been made in merger and every provision. So it is not the same thing. It is not just the powers going from High Court to NCLT. It is a complete rehaul of the procedure that took place. Yes, there will be dispensation of meetings, there will be a procedure where you go to the tribunal for holding the meetings, but the nature of disclosures, the number of authorities that you have to contact, the kind of problems that you may face, the type of schemes that you do in as a part of a merger or compromise or arrangement, all these things will change. And that is why even new company secretaries have that advantage, because even the people who have already done schemes, even the people who are already in this field have to understand the new processes, the new systems, the way new schemes are sanctioned. So that gives you an opportunity to also enter the field. Because generally what happens is, over time, if one field is there are certain people who have been doing that kind of work, say mergers work, for a long time, they have an upper hand. But when the law changes, that also gives opportunity for many other people to relook at it, because things change. So that's why NCLT is a change that can give numerous opportunities even for newcomers to enter these fields, which were earlier not there. This field of merger, a person could not appear before the High Court. So many of the company secretaries never got an opportunity to see the entire merger scheme. So now they can look at this scheme, look at this new field that has opened to them, and they can understand the procedure that takes place and try to enter this field. Then SIC companies. This is another area that erstwhile even Bombay practice did not have, because BIFR is there only at New Delhi. So BIFR practice is again an area that when a company which is in a bad shape, that is what we have seen since 2008, companies have been in a bad shape and they need some help. So under the old act, that help was provided only to industrial companies. Why? Because they said industrial companies are the companies which are helping the nation as such, because they give employment, they help in safeguarding the nation, they help in creating more employment, and they increase GDP. So that's why they protected only industrial companies. Now the new Companies Act said no, that is not there. Even the companies which are software companies, service companies also equally help in furthering the nation's interest, and those companies are also useful. So the entire law on SIC companies has changed. It says that if a company is in some difficulty currently, there needs to be some hand-holding before the company is strong again and is able to survive and sustain. And this is something all of you will see now, because since 2008, when the markets collapsed, many companies are still struggling. So if today you are in employment or you are in practice, you can help these companies who are in trouble by trying to understand these provisions of SIC companies. So let us understand what has changed with respect to SIC companies. In case of SIC companies, any company, whether it's an industrial company or services company or any other type of company, they can take protection under NCLT by calling it a SIC company. The criteria when are you considered a SIC company has changed. Under the old act, there was a net worth negative criteria. So if 100% your net worth is negative, in that case you could approach the BIFR and say I am a SIC company. Now the criteria has been changed. The criteria is now that you are unable to pay your debt. So a secured creditor can apply, or a company can apply if the company is not able to pay on a demand being made 50% of the total outstanding debt. So if a demand is made for a debt and the company is not able to pay, and you can show that the company is not able to pay its debts to 50% or more of the people, the 50% in outstanding value, then in that event the person can go and approach the tribunal and ask for certain protection. Under the old act, many people saw that BIFR provisions were misused. People used to go, they used to say, look, I am a sick company, kindly give me protection. The moment you are determined to be a sick company, it is said that yes, you fulfill the criteria, you are a sick company. They used to do nothing. They used to happily sit and relax because there was one section 22 under the old act, wherein under the Sikha Act, which says that if you are determined to be a sick company, all the proceeding against you are stopped. So these companies were enjoying that status. Under the new act, that is not so. You will have to approach the tribunal, you will have to ask them, you will have to convince them that look, I need certain protection, kindly don't ask the companies to file a case against me. So under the old act, that provision was easily available, that safeguard was easily available. Under the new act, you will have to fight for safeguarding your company. You will have to explain why no person should file a case against you, why your creditors should not file a winding up case against you, why they should not file cases for recovery of debt against you, why your assets should not be attached and should not be sold. So here a larger role will be played by the professionals, because you will have to actively strive to safeguard your company, and you will have to actively put forth before the tribunal that your company is really a deserving company and it needs protection. You will also have to liaison with your creditors, you will also have to liaison with everybody so that a scheme for revival and rehabilitation goes forth. So under the old act, when it was BIFR, many people, after the scheme was sanctioned, after the determination of sickness, they never used to approach the professional again because they just wanted to enjoy that status of being a sick company. Today, the professional will play a very important role, because even the protection that is granted is time bound. Companies Act said, 2013 Act said nothing doing. I am not going to give you protection for lifetime. So they have given only a 120-day window wherein this protection against all cases, even if tribunal considers that yes, that case should be stalled, all the cases against you should be stalled, only a 120-day window is given, and company administrators will be appointed who will devise a scheme in association with the creditors and other people involved. So in this case, a secretary or a professional will play a role in deciding how to revive a company. Earlier it was how to ensure that the company remains sick so that you enjoy the status. But today that entire criteria has changed. You have to see how to quickly revive the company so that you revive the company within the time allotted to you and within the limited protection which is granted to you. And that is why more and more number of companies who are currently struggling will look forward to professionals for trying to resolve their problems and also for devising this scheme. So this is another huge area which is going to open up very, very soon. And today people are struggling, many companies are struggling. So in that event, this field is going to be a huge field. And it is going to create enormous opportunities, not just whether as a representative of the company or as a person who is trying to devise that scheme of relief and rehabilitation, or as a liaising person who is liaising with the authorities and with the creditors to ensure that they also come along with you and help you in revival of the company. So it's a large field. As madam said that soft skills are important, so this will look at your skills, not just whether you know law, but how you get things done. As in the corporate field, it is a person who is able to get things done and who is able to deliver results who has more power. If tomorrow you as professional charge say an X amount, you can charge X plus 10 tomorrow, 10 times of what you are charging, if you are able to show that you are going to add value to the organization. And that is where you can show them that this is the way in which I will add value. And these are the areas that you can look for, wherein along with your regular practice, you can open up these areas so that you will, as professional, grow exponentially in your field. as I mentioned, class action, new power of tribunal. What exactly is this power? Class action as a power is such that it can change the way things function. Under the old Act, Operation Mismanagement was a power which was given to Company Law Board, but it was a very limited power. So Company Law Board used to say that, look, there is a act, the company has passed a resolution in violation of its articles. The company is doing something wrong, but is it a continuing offense? Is it a continuing wrong? And how is it affecting you as a shareholder? So all these things you had to showcase. So you had to show that you are aggrieved as a shareholder, the company has done something wrong and that wrong is continuing. So many people were not able to use the remedy of operation and mismanagement. So now, like say for instance Satyam's case. In Satyam's case, many people went in India, the Indian investors tried to file a case and they said, look, we should be paid damages for what has happened. The company has defrauded the people, so we as shareholders, we as investors are entitled to get damages for this. The Supreme Court held that no, there is the concept of class action does not exist in India, so you are not entitled to get anything. But what happened outside India was they were able to get, the foreign investors were able to get, they were settled, their dues were settled. When they filed a case abroad, their dues were settled, whereas Indian investors got nothing. So that's why in the New Companies Act they said that if there is a wrong done, then there should be somebody who is liable to pay for it. And that is what took place. The class action is a remedy that says if any act is violated, if any provision of the act is violated, or if your memorandum or articles is violated, or if there is any fraudulent activity or any unlawful activity, then you can file a class action. That means unlawful activity, very large, as in what do you mean by unlawful activities? Fraudulent, unlawful, wrongful act. There is no definition and it is not defined or restricted by any word. If you can show that this something which is done by the director is unlawful, he is bidding from another company and our company is not able to bid for that project, unlawful activity. So they have not restricted the scope of class action, and that is where this remedy can be used for multiple wrongs that the investors feel, whether it is shareholders or depositors. They can use this remedy because it is not restricted at all. It does not say operation to the members, it does not say public interest. It says any unlawful act. You just show the unlawful act and how the company is prejudiced and how are you liable to damages. You have incurred damages because of that, and you get an opportunity to ask the NCLT for damages. Not only from the company, not only from the directors, but also from experts who have helped, but also from financial advisors who have helped the company, also from the registered valuer who might have valued certain assets with respect to certain fraudulent activity. So that entire spectrum is open now. Every action of the director can be challenged, every action of the company can be challenged in class action if it meets that threshold. And the threshold has been kept low, but the tribunal is given the right. So people can file cases if they see there is something wrong done, there is something wrong taking place in the company, they can file that case. What are the tests and how it will be used, and in which event they can file the case, in which event they cannot file the case, that will be something that the NCLT will devise when it sees which cases come before it. But till then, that field is open for you to explore. And as professionals, I always, whenever I am going for MSOP, I always tell them that be innovative. In your field, you are not just there filing, be innovative. Try to innovate, and this is one area where you can innovate. When can you file a case? When can you safeguard your investors' interest? How will you safeguard it? What kind of case? How do I seek compensation? What is the criteria in which I should seek compensation? How much compensation should I seek? So this area nobody has studied. So you are at par with even advocates and even with the company secretaries who have been practicing for a long time. Why? Because nobody knows this field. And this field is huge. As in, I was just giving an example. Outside India, the kind of class action that takes place is $2.5 billion in settlement. Look at the pricing, as in there are $10 billion and $50 billion. They're in billions. The settlements that take place in class action are huge. So if you are safeguarding somebody's interest who is asking another person for say 50 crore, 20 crore, where there are 25,000 crore rupee fraud, so that will be the kind of compensation that you might be seeking in this case. So in that event, your professional charges are also going to be equally high. And that's why this area is something you can explore. You can start studying. There is still time because NCLT is going to take some time. So within that, you can explore these new areas which are coming up. Which time? Should I continue with the other aspects, or should we stop here? Because how much time do we have further? 10 minutes. Okay. So these were the three fields which I felt I should discuss in detail. Even the other fields which are open are new, like reopening of accounts, revision of accounts, then the remedy with respect to refusal to transfer or transmit shares. These remedies will be something which many people will be seeking, and that is again an area of practice in NCLT for many. In Company Law Board, the maximum number of cases were that of operation mismanagement, followed by refusal to transfer or transmit, and compounding. So these matters will be key areas of practice even in NCLT. High Court work, the areas which were in which High Court does maximum amount of cases which will now go to tribunal is winding up. It's an enormous area. What is to be done with the assets? If the accounts are not found, records sometimes the directors destroy. So what is to be done with that? All this was earlier dealt with by the official liquidator. It was a headache of official liquidator as well as the High Court. But now company liquidators will be there. So a company liquidator will play a role even in the involuntary winding up. And that is the reason why that entire area which was erstwhile outside the bounds of company secretaries, now that will be some area where all of us will study and will need to study, and it's a huge area because inability to pay debts is a most common ground for filing a winding up case. And as you see, every second company is not paying some or the other debts. So the winding up matters, if I just may give you example of High Court, say 5 years back there were 1 or 2 cases being filed. Today 4 days of one judge are dealing only with winding up matters. So that is the avalanche of winding up matters that are there in the High Court, and those are the matters that are likely to come to you tomorrow once the NCLT is there. Another area in High Court, mergers. Mergers is again a very big field. The number of mergers that took place 5 years back were like they were filing 1 or 2 or say 5 matters in a week. But now the company department in Bombay High Court is flooded with cases, as in every Friday we have matters with respect to mergers, and the number of mergers has grown say 100-fold, because now even small company, they are seeing related party transaction going to be a problem, something or the other, transferring funds from one company to another related company going to be a problem. So in all these cases, people are considering that it is of no use to have multiple subsidiaries. It is no good having several related parties. Let us merge and create one combined entity. And that is what is happening today. So the number of mergers, even mergers within the group, are increasing considerably. Many people, for income tax purposes and for improving the smooth flow of work within the related parties, they are considering merger as a route. So the mergers also as such is an evolving field. When can you merge? The type of schemes that you can have, those are areas where you can start researching on, because that area has also increased considerably. So saying that, I feel that I have almost covered the entire spectrum of NCLT. I have just, the purpose of talking on this subject was that I should just be able to explain what is there for you, what is there in it for you. As in, it is not just a new tribunal, but it is a avalanche of opportunity, and all of you should strive to use that opportunity to the best extent possible. And that is what I thought I would just share with you today. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.